Well, let me see if I can walk you through this. That is the book we're going to read and the band playing on, just to get an idea of how the book is shaped and what to keep a lookout for. It's kind of a tricky book, and I'm going to go through the first 80 pages very quickly. I don't want to talk forever here, but I just want to give you an idea is that the book is written chronologically, so everything in the book happens in real time. And the book opens when people had no idea what was going on with AIDS. That is, people died for many years before anybody knew what was killing them. And that's probably one of the strongest things about the book. And it's what I'd like you to focus on for the first essay, which will be due Friday. What is that? 22, 4, 26 at the end of week 2. It's not going to be that long an essay, but I want you to keep in mind as you read through it what mystified people about the first patients. Their illnesses, they were so mysterious. And I think that's really kind of the background about this disease. So it starts off, you wonder why it opens, July 4th, 1976. And he explains it pretty well. Many epidemiologists thought, oh, that's when the virus came to America. And then you may wonder, how did we get over to Kinshasa, Zaire? How did we get to the African Congo? Well, because Gert Rask is one of the first well-documented cases of AIDS. And so you have a good description of her illness, so you want to keep your eye out for what was confusing about her. How did people not figure it out? There's a lot more there, but I don't want to talk too much about it. If I follow every line of thought here, this recording could go on for hours. So just trying to say, look at Gert Rask. How did she confuse people? It's a good story. It's a really wonderful story. So follow it, and then of course we go into the next year, and Gert Rask goes back home. And they don't understand. They don't understand well what killed her. So look at the medical mystery in that. And then we get into the before 1980. Nobody knew what this was. People wouldn't believe it until 1983 or 4. You got 3 years of real ignorance. But we're getting the before. So he's going to have a long section here. It's kind of good, background. The sort of glory days of the gay pride movement, basically pre-AIDS glory days. And he's going to introduce some key players. Cleve Jones is going to be very instrumental in fighting this disease. So he's giving the background. Cleve, somebody he's with at the time. And then you're going to move into before again, before the epidemic, some gay leaders. Bill Krause is going to be very instrumental in getting funding from a national level for AIDS. So they give you a lot of his background. What's it like being a political leader in the gay movement? Not a lot of illness here, but just trying to give you the background. And then lots more about the parade, about 300,000 people in downtown San Francisco, about, and 15 years earlier, 1965, if you had 4 or 5 or more homosexuals in public, they'd get arrested. They weren't allowed to hang out together. Now you have 300,000 in downtown San Francisco in a parade. So it's really kind of an unusual time and a time of great celebration. So some good background, kind of gay history stuff. Not really working with the disease so much. Nobody knows about it. It's just about kind of a panorama of gay life at the time. Some of their failings, some of their successes as a group. Cleve Jones is riding on top of the Ferris wheel, and then the Ferris wheel, nice novelistic touch, touches on the ground. So he's been high in the air looking at a crowd of 300,000 people, and now reality. He's back on the ground, and the next three words, a new disease. So this next part, it's not going to be really about AIDS, but it's going to be about the high rates of STDs. So it's very worthwhile looking into this. I think Schultz has an unusual fascination with the sort of raunchier aspect of gay life. So they, but he's getting into kind of gritty part of it with sex clubs and huge rates of STDs, and this is sort of a biological incubator. No age yet, but I think you get an idea what he's doing there. He's saying, wow, with all this stuff getting spread, what if something really bad happened here? So that's what you're doing with that. And then we have a political leader Merv Silverman, he's going to be very important later on. I'm going to leave that alone, the politics of that. But here, Gayton Dugas, one of the most infamous and famous patients, Schultz creates him as the person practically who brought AIDS to North America. So pay attention to how he presents him, and keep in mind our topic, the illness. Gayton has an illness, Kaposi sarcoma, and pay attention to him. He'll be for essay 2. So whenever you get Gayton Dugas, pay attention, look at the kind of person he is, look at how Schultz presents him, because he's one of the major characters. We'll have a lot to talk about when we get around to that essay. And we get a bit into his illness, Kaposi sarcoma, and his love of partying and lots of sex. And then we get more into the kind of the raunchy part of sex life. You don't have to get too involved in this. It's kind of hydraulic, and I don't know if it's that helpful, but Schultz seems to want to open those doors and show people probably just where the virus spread most quickly. And now we move into, what are we at? Page 25, I'll take forever. Larry Kramer just died a week ago. Very influential in this disease. So we're going to get a gloss. We've gone from San Francisco. Now we're going over to New York. The people in New York got sick about a year earlier than those in San Francisco. The virus spread from east to west, from New York to San Francisco. So it's Larry, the main character, but through his friends, we're going to realize that this main character knows a lot of people who are suddenly getting sick. So he's right in the middle of it. And then a lot of background to Larry Kramer. Very famous book he wrote. He got in a lot of trouble. And roughly speaking, he's somebody who thinks gay people should be more romantic. This is 40 years before gay marriage, or 30 years before. And he's wondering about this just purely sexualized life. Anyway, and more about politics. So not all of this is going to be right on topic. Some of it will. Some of it won't. And then we have more people getting sick in New York. More people getting sick in New York. So pay attention to that for your first essay. Pay attention to that. Now we're into politics, national politics. It may not have a lot to do directly with AIDS, but what it does have to do is getting the federal government to respond. And if the gay people don't have a voice, they won't get a lot of help. So kind of a long stretch here. Maybe you can kind of breeze through it, but it's gay people are starting to have a political presence in the national agenda, and that's what this is covering. That'll come in very important in a few years when they need money to fight this disease. So that's well worth working at. And then we're back into illness and death and toxoplasmosis. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to the mystery. Now we have we're off in Denmark, another place where some of the earliest cases are. More patients dying. What's mysterious about it? Follow that. Follow that thread. Take your notes. And then we have another coming out of Africa. I forget if we are in Copenhagen still. Okay, good. So we're looking at the people falling ill in Germany, in France, and that's the way this disease worked. People died in isolation all over the world, but nobody could connect the dots because at first they were alone. But as more and more people got sick, the patterns started emerging. So then we're moving back to New York. Another young man, a lot of these really, really good folks, teachers, focused people, they're not, real raunchy fools. They're actually trying to hold a good life together. And they're dying as well. And this person is a friend of, Gayton Dugas, the guy we met earlier, who was Schultz creates as somebody who brought the disease to the country. And we move back to San Francisco, more deaths. Michael Malata, pay attention to him. Director of San Francisco Public Health, Selma Dreets, pay attention to her. She's got, she's going to be the center of this. There's a lot of more stat about the exploding STDs. And so you got to watch that, very important. And then we're back in Greenwich Village, the end of 1981, and more people getting sick, New York doctors wonders what's going on. And then a really well-named chapter, it starts freeze frames. That is, people don't know what the picture is, the motion picture. All they do is have these isolated shots. But once that film reel starts turning, they're going to see the motion. They're going to see the movie. They don't see the movie right now. They just have the frames. Gottlieb is going to be given credit for pretty much discovering the disease, at least, in his publication on, I think it was June 5th, 1981. So what do we have? 39 years ago. And so, it's a few months before. We're going to see how Gottlieb intersected the disease. A little bit about his background. He's a very key figure. Great mysteries here. They don't know what's going on. They've never seen it before. Somebody with no T cells. Pay attention to that. Back to politics. We can leave that. Reagan gets elected. A lot of politics here. It will have an influence later on about how little funding there is for this disease. But it's not central to what we're going to be writing about. So read it, breeze through. But when you get back to New York at St. Luke's Hospital, look at the people, look at the illnesses. Back in San Francisco with Ken Horn, look at the people. A lot of background with him. He's one of the first people to die in San Francisco of this disease, 1980. So you got to kind of watch it. And then more on Gayton Dugas, more on Ken Horn, kind of back and forth. And that's what Schultz does, is he goes back and forth between all these patients down to Southern California, more mysterious patients. They're going to make that first publication by Dr. Gottlieb. And I did a little bit of background about the year. More New York patients. Why are they dying? New York doctor, what's going on with this guy? What's wrong with the patients? People starting to feel that maybe something's going on. Maybe it's the same thing that killed those two other guys. Nobody's sure yet. Nobody knows. This is a new disease, but they're starting to come alive to it. And then we get into 1981, and probably going to really great thing by Michael Crichton. It's almost word for word what went wrong with the epidemic, even though it's from a work of fiction, the Andromeda strain. But nice little excerpt there. And now we're getting more people. Critical mass. They're starting to add up. They're starting to take shape. Like something really is going on and more people are dying. So he's just following that clock forward, day by day, week by week, pulling in the new deaths from around the world. One of my favorite characters, Sandra Ford, you just got to pay attention to her. She's really cool. And find out how she knew something was going on. I'll just leave it at that. She's great. More politics. I'm going to cruise by it. But one of the most